Hi, I'm Marianne Power, and I'm really excited today to be bringing you Billie Murphy, who is a general manager specializing in sustainable development goals, youth well-being, and corporate social responsibility. And for those of you who might not have heard of those terms, don't worry, because we're going to get to everything today. But Billie's currently working at one of Australia's huge charity groups, SolarBuddy, who are on a mission to bring the power of light to increase equity in education around the globe. Now, Billie's background is actually in teaching, and she's taught in both primary schools and secondary schools, all over the place, really. Australia, India, England. I can't wait to hear about those adventures with you, Billie. But one of the things that she loves most about education is just the power of kids. And that's really where she and I connected. And I'm so excited to share this conversation with you all because SolarBuddy is really, from my perspective, moving the needle at such a practical level on the gift of education to all. And as you know, here at Posify, we're also all about equity in education. Anyway, I could ramble on and I can't wait to do so with you, Billie. First of all, welcome and thank you so much. I know your schedule is off the charts, crazy, and you've made time to speak with us all about the future of learning. So thank you.
Thank you so much. No, very excited to be here and share a little bit more about my journey and the work that we do at SolarBuddy.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Let's start there, actually, because I'm getting distracted by the sustainable development goals behind you. We're going to get there, but let's start with your journey because you've had such an interesting wayfinding point to where you are now, teaching and now obviously GM with a charity. Can you tell us a little bit about your after-school path and what made it special for you?
Yeah, definitely. So you can probably tell from my accent, I am British. So I grew up in England, went to school in England, and I was also a professional footballer throughout my high school years.
Oh, I didn't know that bit. You've told me a bit about your history. There you go.
Kept that a secret. So yeah, growing up, it was a bit of a balance between school and playing football. To me, the football side of things always was a little bit more fun compared to school. I enjoyed school, but I wasn't necessarily a real high achiever in that space. But I loved sport. I loved the community and connection that I got from playing sport. And when I left high school, I actually went on to a bit of a sporting academy. So I played for Arsenal for a number of years.
Wow.
At 16, yeah, very, very awesome experience. And at 16, I moved out of home and we lived in a bit of a off-campus sporting college with that club. So I got to play football in the mornings and then go to college in the afternoons. So I lived the dream really for a few years. Had a great time doing that. And then that kind of all had to come to an end. When I was 18, I had to make some decisions around, look, do I try and pursue this career in football or do I go to university and continue my studies while still playing football, but I guess also giving myself the opportunity for other career options in the future. So I decided to go to university. I studied sports science initially, so I still got kind of my ties to sport within that, and balancing playing football again at the same time. And then when my degree finished, I kind of had to make a decision again with what next, what do I want to do? I still couldn't quite work out if I wanted to play football or go elsewhere, and I decided to be a teacher. I'd always loved working with children. I'd coached throughout my sporting years, coaching younger people, loved kind of being able to share my experience and knowledge with younger kids. I always found it easy talking to children, maybe even a little bit easier at the time to work with children than adults. It's all changed now, but yeah, I used to just love working with children. So decided to study as a primary school teacher, and then was lucky enough to get a job at a school that I did a prac at with kind of my last year at university. So yeah, started to teach up in Leeds, the north of England. So that was an amazing experience. I loved teaching, but I kind of had this feeling that I wasn't taking any risks and I was in my comfort zone. So it wasn't until a little girl called Zoe joined my class who had severe learning difficulties. She had Down syndrome, but she also had a number of brain difficulties at birth, which meant she couldn't communicate, she couldn't talk. So I was really taken out of my own comfort zone as a teacher. I had to learn to deal with some quite aggressive behaviour. I had to learn sign language.
Wow.
And for the first 3 months of her being in my class, I was ready to quit teaching. It was just too difficult. But after probably 6 months, we built an amazing rapport together. And when I actually decided to leave teaching and go travelling, leaving Zoe was probably one of the hardest things I had to do.
Oh, I can imagine. And this was while you were at Leeds and teaching,
Yes.
teaching there. Yeah, wow. Gosh,
Yeah, so
that's a steep learning curve. And sounds like
Absolutely.
the connection that you had just in that short space of time. I mean, looking back, 6 months would have felt like forever. And at the same time, to build that connection is really special. What do you think the point of differentiation was? What was the magic between you both?
I think for me, it was I'd finally found something that challenged me. It wasn't easy to build this rapport and connection. With other kids in my class, I could kick a football with them and straight away I was liked. Whereas with Zoe, I had to really work for it. And she absolutely took me out of my comfort zone. Learning sign language was an amazing journey. And we built this amazing relationship. And I guess she really made me realize that I wanted to work with children who are less fortunate than others. So I guess she taught me a lot about what I wanted to do and breaking out of some comfort zones. And that's where I decided I need to go and travel the world. I need to teach children in different countries, understand a lot more about different cultures. So at 22, decided to book a one-way ticket to Australia. That was my first stop.
Wow.
Didn't know anyone in the country. But I picked Brisbane because Google told me it was the hottest state in Australia. Had no clue, but yeah, it said it looked hot and a lot of British people chase the sun.
The sun.
Yeah. So yeah, booked an Airbnb in Brisbane, and my Airbnb host was kind enough to pick me up from the train station when I arrived in Brisbane. On my own, thinking, what on earth have I done? I've left a very stable life and career in England to do this. But yeah, I picked this Airbnb and it happened to change my life because my Airbnb host was the founder of SolarBuddy. So ironically, serendipitously, picking that Airbnb has led me to where I am today.
Wow.
And my whole plans to travel Australia and travel the world initially pretty much came to a standstill when I first met Simon, who was the founder of SolarBuddy. But 5 years later, I have traveled in a very different way with the work that we do, taught children all over the world. And I'm now in a position as general manager of a whole team of adults, not children. Which has just been an amazing experience for me, and one that I know I never would have got if I stayed within teaching. So I'm really proud that I took that risk, and I've now been able to achieve so many awesome things with SolarBuddy.
That I imagine you wouldn't have been able to achieve without that teaching background, but that's almost a whole other story. There are so many points of where you've gone there I really want to pick up on, and I'm going to bookmark a few of them. But first of all, I wish I could be a fly on that car window, and I reckon our listeners do too. Was that an instantaneous, hi person who's just come from England who's staying in my Airbnb, do you want to work for us? Or how did that evolve?
Yeah, it was, so he's British himself. So I remember the fact that he offered to collect me from the station straight away made me feel some connection to him and some comfort that I knew one person. Yeah, I felt welcome. And I actually didn't see him for 2 weeks because he was off to Papua New Guinea. And again, I had no idea where Papua New Guinea was in the world. But when he came back, I was asking him about his trip. And that's when he started to share the story of SolarBuddy. And from an education perspective and what he wanted to achieve in that space, that's what really hooked me. He created this whole idea of educating children here in Australia about this huge global issue, but empowering them to do something about it in the classroom. And I was just hooked and kind of packed up and said, look, I will volunteer my time and follow you around and learn from you. And then we were lucky enough to get a grant to cover my role part-time. And then a year later, we'd built the team. and I've never left since.
That's just incredible. That's incredible. Okay, so I'm a little bit spoiled because I know a bit about SolarBuddy, but there's lots of our listeners who won't. So do tell us about the work you're doing to really move the needle in education.
Yeah, absolutely. So SolarBuddy is a charity. We are based in Australia, but we've also launched overseas as well. But essentially, we're educating children and adults on the issue of energy poverty. There's around 789 million people around the world who live in energy poverty, meaning they have no access to electricity whatsoever. And we've designed a number of awesome solutions to gift to children and families living in energy poverty to break the cycle, which we'll probably talk a little bit in more detail about what energy poverty really is. But where we see ourselves and where we're a little bit different to other charities is that we develop engagement models to really teach people here in Australia about the issue in a really tangible way. So all of our solutions come in kit form. So for our education program, students actually get to fundraise for the lights themselves. They put the lights together, so they learn about the different components, renewable technology, circuitry, and then they actually get to become global citizens. So they get to take the time to sit and do something for somebody else and connect through a letter of encouragement. And then we donate those solutions overseas to children just like them, but who unfortunately live in energy poverty.
So our listeners who know a little bit about Posify know that we are completely driven by helping the next gen foster a sense of purpose and develop these 21st century skills are probably nodding their heads going, I can see why Maz was so keen to get Billie on, because I'm hearing creativity, I'm hearing applied thinking and applied blue sky thinking to design these solutions with you and alongside you, but to really get their hands involved in some inquiry-based learning and design thinking principles and engineering design to put the lights together that then go to other parts of the world. And we're going to get to this in a minute, Australia, because we have difficulties here with energy poverty, which I didn't know until I had a conversation with you to the extent of that. But this really hands-on and involved process of connecting our young people here to a purpose-driven project that makes a tangible difference. It's just an incredible model, and I encourage everybody listening, we're going to throw all of the links into today's episode page and show notes. Really check out how you can get SolarBuddy involved in your schools and also your workplaces. But let's jump down to, can you define for listeners who may not have come across the definition before of exactly what energy poverty is? So you mentioned no access to electricity, but how is that affecting and at what scale here in Australia as well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there are almost two types of energy poverty. We have extreme energy poverty, which means that people have no access whatsoever to electricity. And then we have just general energy poverty, which means they may have intermittent or non-reliable access to electricity. So globally, there are around 789 million people living in extreme energy poverty, meaning when the sun sets at nighttime, they are literally living in pitch darkness. There is nothing whatsoever. They're totally relying on kerosene lanterns and firewood for lighting. However, within Australia, there's actually around 500,000 people who live in energy poverty, predominantly in rural and remote locations. And that's very much down to lack of infrastructure in some communities, the affordability of lighting, and the unreliability of diesel generators. So again, relying on generators for electricity and lighting, which is pretty crazy that in a very developed country, people are still relying on diesel generators for lighting and they don't have access to grid systems here across Australia. So it's a huge issue. It affects children and women in particular the most, especially overseas, as they're predominantly the ones who are in the homes more, constantly breathing in kerosene fuel, which is having detrimental effects to their health and well-being. It also affects families economically because they're spending money on kerosene, diesel generators and firewood, things that are literally going up in smoke every single night. It also affects the environment. So those kerosene lanterns on a global scale emit around 190 million tons of CO2 into the atmosphere. which is the same as 38 million cars on the road every single year. So it is a vicious cycle of events. However, it is easily solvable. Unlike some other types of poverty, energy poverty can be solved. But first of all, people need to be aware of it and be empowered to be part of the solution, because that's one of the main issues. Is it's a term that not enough people know about. And unless you know about an issue, you can't do something about it. So that's a huge part of what we're trying to achieve as well, is that education about the issue, and then together we can break that cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. And what are you finding people are most surprised by when you start that education piece? Because, I mean, we know when we're designing solutions, and I think one of the barriers that we come up across when it comes to designing solutions for especially the SDGs, because we're talking about wicked world problems, and what you've just described is so multi-layered, and the complexities. I mean, I started with my thinking around, oh, a kid's not going to have light to read when the sun goes down. But when you hear the layer upon layer of the impact, it can feel really overwhelming. So for us, it's to your point, well, where's that little gap or that opportunity where my contribution or our contribution as an organization can make just that 1% change, which is what I'm loving about your solution. It's not attempting or pretending to change the entire problem, but it's contributing, I would argue, more than 1% of a change, but a change to the problem. What are you finding when you take that conversation into the corporates, in particular industry, that the contribution is in coming back, or where the surprises are about the problem and where the solution could be?
I think the initial shock factor is, like, I always ask people, if I'm talking at a corporate event or even at schools, I ask people to put their hands up if they've ever heard of the term energy poverty before.
Yeah.
And out of a room of 100, you might get one or two.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Even 4 or 5 years after we've been going, it is still just not
it's not in our language.
No, we just don't comprehend what that is. And I think we just, living in such a developed country, we really take for granted the ability to flick on a light switch.
Yes.
And when we start to talk around some of the stats, unfortunately, energy poverty kills more people every single year than HIV and malaria combined. Yeah, wow. And again, most people have heard of those two types of diseases and illnesses, yet energy poverty is pretty unheard of. So it's quite a shocking, some shocking statistics around the issues itself. But we've still got a long way to go with just simply raising awareness about that issue, not only globally, but here at a local perspective. These issues should not be occurring within Australia. So we're really trying to break down some of those barriers.
And what are you seeing off the back of the work that you're doing that's in the ripple effect and working well in terms of that education in communities and what people are picking up and doing with it?
Yeah, so I think we see some great impact from a school perspective and corporate perspective of people actually taking part in our programs, learning about the issues, and then, of course, becoming global citizens. Corporate employees are feeling more connected to their organisation because they want to work for a company that's purpose-driven and that wants to work with charities in this space. And then the main impact we see is obviously the children receiving these solutions. We've got some amazing stories around, one of my favourites in particular. We worked with an all-girls school in Tanzania with one of our partners, and prior to them receiving their SolarBuddy lights, there was 36 girls in a class, but not one of them passed their national curriculum test.
Wow.
But not one, but 12 months after receiving their lights, 36 out of 36 girls passed that test.
That just gave me tingles. That's incredible.
It's incredible. Yeah.
Wow.
It's amazing. Gives me goosebumps every time.
Yeah, that's just given me such a rush of goosebumps. I'm so curious. Was there any understanding or breakdown of that in terms of, again, the multi-layers? So the first thing that comes to my mind, okay, so they've had longer to study. But then when I start to think about the complexities, was there an understanding of, and they also didn't have to do X, Y, and Z because energy helped to shift that along the way? Or what were sort of those common factors that played in together?
Yeah, that again, lots of different factors, even down to being able to come together as a family at nighttime and eat dinner with a light and be able to play cards.
The connection and the growth.
Absolutely, connection, even being able to play games that's supporting learning, being able to have fun within their communities. And that just shows us that if we give children the tools to continue their studies and to learn and actually help themselves, these children will absolutely run with it. Which I guess is something that I've really learned from working with children in different countries, is that they have nothing in terms of things. They have no things, yet you give them one thing that they know is going to change their life. They will absolutely grasp it and run with it. And that's probably one of the most amazing things that we see is the children's impact that they actually have on their own lives just through this one little donation. They take it above and beyond what we could ever imagine.
That's just amazing. Hey there, I wanted to tell you about an exciting and innovative solution we've been designing to help solve this problem of how we best prepare the next gen for an ever-evolving world and future workforce that's going to demand a whole new set of skills and mindsets in order for them to thrive. The Posify Academy is Australia's first student-led, evidence-based and curriculum-aligned wellbeing and career development platform, helping young people aged 10 to 14 uncover and deliver their unique potential. It's the first of a trilogy series that's helping young people move seamlessly and with confidence from education and into industry as they design a life and a career of impact. Teaching skills like communication, compassion, creativity, critical thinking, agility, curiosity, resilience, problem solving, all those human capability skills that we talk about here on this podcast, and connecting them with a sense of purpose. To learn more, you can visit theposifygroup.com.au/posify-academy. Now to the show. You know, I'm a little bit again ahead of the game here, having researched the power of purpose for a while now, and we know that it's a reciprocal impact, right? So that yes, of course, a person on the receiving end of a design, a solution like yours, you'd want to hope there are some benefits, and thank you for sharing, you know, so clearly what those benefits are. But in reverse, the person who's involved in putting forward the solution or the gift of giving or the being involved in producing the light, and you mentioned the kids also write letters to whoever who is receiving the light as well. So I know that there's an impact in reverse there, but can you share with us what you're noticing with the kids here as in Australia that you're working with that get the opportunity to contribute?
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I think it is so important to give kids the opportunity to get outside of their own little bubble. Kids are so absorbed in what's happening in their own life, difficulties that they're finding, but to give them the opportunity to see how others in the world live, that really gives them a sense of gratitude of actually, I'm really lucky to live in this country, to have what I have in this classroom. And I always talk around getting kids to just look around the room and think about all of those things in your room that use electricity and start to comprehend, okay, well, if we didn't have whiteboards, we didn't have air conditioning, if we didn't have all of these things, just how hard it would be to even learn. And I think that taking a step back and understanding how lucky we are and having some gratitude changes kids' mindsets, and you almost see it ticking over in them as you're sharing the story. And then by the time they get to writing the letters, after they've already had a great time building the lights, some of the connection and stories that they make is just beautiful. The messages of encouragement, the messages of hope. And I think the letter writing is one of my favorite parts of the program. And because I've physically delivered these lights to children, and the first thing they do is read the letters.
Wow.
It's pretty incredible. They've never heard from anyone outside of their community space before, and they just love it, even if it's in English and they can't understand English and they've got to wait for their translator to translate. Their eyes are just absolutely buzzing to see these pictures. But for the Aussie kids here, I think just that sense of connection that they can build with another child is pretty special.
Thank you for so beautifully painted a picture of what we know in the research too, you know, the power of purpose in terms of increasing people's sense of well-being, but also then their engagement, their love of learning, and which then has a ripple effect to anybody who wants the rats and the stats and the cats version the academic results and life satisfaction. But you're right, it's that perspective. I think that's what purpose gives our kids, is just a different perspective, a different way of seeing things, and ability to build those empathy muscles. So, okay, so for anybody who's now listening, because, I'm imagining we've got a few people saying, how do I get involved? What does it look like to be working alongside with SolarBuddy, or to have you into our schools and our workplaces?
Yeah, so we have engaged with probably over 500 schools now across Australia, and we've got a goal to work with every single school in the country.
Amazing.
We want to get this program out to as many schools as we can, and it's really simple, to be totally honest. A link to our website just kind of gives you the opportunity to engage with us, and then our team connect with your school, your teachers, and work out a little bit more about how you see the SolarBuddy program fitting into your current curriculum. We have a range of resources that we've developed that are all aligned to ACARA and mapped to the SDGs. So we have a real strong suite of resources ourselves, but we really want to work with schools to make sure that our program fits your needs and what you're doing already. I know for a lot of schools, in year 6, they focus on circuits. So the SolarBuddy program is great for them to actually see what a circuit looks like and how that all comes together, as well as adding in the element of global citizenship as well. So we want to engage with as many schools as possible. My aim and my dream is that Aussie kids here are ending energy poverty for kids all over the world, and that children can be the ones taking the lead with that, and empowering others to join on.
Well, that's a dream I think we can both agree on, and we will be doing whatever we can to help you move in that direction. For some of our listeners who might be joining us from overseas, so Billie mentioned ACARA, and that's our Australian curriculum here, which SolarBuddy has linked their design curriculum to, and also the SDGs. This is one of the first Classroom 5.0 episodes you're listening into or joining us on YouTube, the Sustainable Development Goals. Actually, I'm going to hand over to you, Billie. Why don't you define and describe the SDGs for some of our listeners who may not have come across them before?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and they were developed as a real call to action to the world to end poverty and fight inequality and injustice. And each of the goals has a number of targets that we need to work towards. And again, not enough people know about these goals. So we really want to share the message of what they are, because there's some really big goals in there that we need to try and achieve in the next 8 years. So we've tried to align our programs on a global level to really attack some of those SDGs and to teach children about what they actually are, but most importantly, give them the opportunity to take action towards those. So in particular, there's SDG number 7, which is all around renewable energy, and that's a huge focus of ours. So yeah, I think it's important that kids know what the SDGs are. I've been speaking to a few schools recently around how they're really embedding the SDGs into every element of their
curriculum programs, which is so good to see. And, for us at Posify, we're aligned with the SDGs for health and well-being, equity and education, and then improving industry and infrastructure, but also partnership for the goals, which is why we called ourselves a group. So for listeners, anybody who hears the term, in addition to charity, of a social enterprise, usually you'll find that social enterprises are trying to move the needle on those social SDGs as well. And then in the corporate space, Billie, that's another one of your expertise. So corporate social responsibility, can you tell us, those who may not have come across that term, what we're seeing in the world of work at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think probably around after 3 years of running our school program, we realized that there was a huge opportunity to continue our work with corporate organizations. It's not only children who don't know about the issue of energy poverty. I think even more so it's adults that don't know about the issue, but also have the ability in their workplaces to do something about it. So we engage with a number of event agencies and a number of organizations to roll out a bit of an event program where if corporate organizations were having team meetings or conferences, we would actually come and do a presentation on the work that we do, and then in teams people would come together to assemble the lights, And that all links in with their corporate social responsibility and them also supporting the SDGs, as again, most corporates are now aligning themselves and their strategy with the SDGs. So it was a pretty perfect alignment for us. And again, that hands-on approach of what we do just gave corporates a great opportunity to not just donate money and have impact, but really have impact themselves as employees. And we've built a number of partnerships even now where we actually have corporate organizations going into schools and delivering our programs, which has enabled us to reach more schools, also some low socioeconomic schools. The corporates actually can help fund that. Because we believe every child should have the opportunity to take part in our program across Australia. And some of those awesome corporates are stepping up to fund that as well, which is great to see our two programs kind of come together, because we've got one goal at the end of the day to deliver as many solutions as we can. And if we can collaborate, schools and corporates and individuals, then we've got a good chance of getting there.
Oh, I just couldn't agree with you more. I think I remember interviewing Jan Owen back in 2019, and she really planted that seed in my mind that now more than ever we need that role of intermediaries, which is what you're doing, is bringing industry and education and the next gen together to really work together to design solutions to this big wicked problem. So congrats. Everything that you've shared is just, for me, so inspiring, and I know our listeners will be jumping out of their seats. I want to circle back, if I can, because we're going to finish up soon, but there are so many just parts of you, Billie, that you've also shared. So I'm thinking back to our conversation around sport and where you were in the classroom as this elite sports person, and then moving into what do I do after sport, and what does that look like in the world? I'm going to teach. Moving into teaching, and through teaching, part of teaching is connection and that love of learning that inspired a deeper part of impact, one-to-one. Then into the charity space. That's a huge leap of faith. And now I know that you're not only managing this team, an Australian charity that's doing work around the world, but you're also driving the needle yourself with all of these keynote talks and presentations and showing up. Can you give us a little bit of insight into the world of Billie? What makes you tick and so unique and special? How is it that you found your strengths to have this entire multi-potentialite profile?
It's been a journey. It's been, quite a journey from where I was at back in England, teaching, playing football. I think I was always wanting more. I was never satisfied with just a kind of 9 to 5 job, finishing work and then moving on. I kind of always, if ever I felt comfortable, I always wanted to make a change because I felt like there was no growth in being comfortable. And I think looking back now, some of the risks that I took were pretty crazy. Leaving my whole family, whole friends to move to Australia. I had everything. To most people, I had everything I could want back in the UK. But again, I just felt too comfortable. So I think taking those risks and getting out of my comfort zone has really led me to be in a place where I have learned so many new skills in my role now as a general manager. I've not got to just teach little people, I've got to manage older people, which I love doing, but has absolutely been hard. It's been hard to learn how to do that. Yeah, absolutely. But I think one thing that I've always made sure that, although I'm only 29, I'm still pretty young, but although I haven't got all of the experience that some other people may have in my role or may think you need to be in a role like mine, I've got the passion. I think if you're passionate about something, you can do anything that you want to do. And I've been lucky enough to have some really amazing role models for me moving into this role as general manager that's helped me in those little areas I needed more support with from a finance perspective, HR perspective. But my passion towards helping children has always been kind of at the bottom and in my heart, I guess, of everything I do. So I think just that passion and that drive to keep getting out of those comfort zones, try new things. I'm not afraid to fail. I'm quite happy to fail and go again and keep trying.
Yeah, I'm definitely hearing curiosity in all of that. Curiosity, courage, and compassion, the big three C's. Absolutely. And so if we take that energy is a given for the future of learning, and we imagine our future learning spaces, that there's energy all over the world, if that's the goal we're moving forward to. In addition to energy, what's one or two things, if you could wave a magic wand, that you would like to see in our future learning spaces so that the little Billies today have the opportunities that you've had to thrive into tomorrow?
Yeah, I was thinking a lot about this question earlier, and I think on reflection, nothing ever stopped me from being what I wanted to be. I never had that pressure of social media growing up. I never had the pressure of what other people thought of me. And I feel like we need some real strong positive psychology education in schools these days. It worries me, the mental health issues we find around children in schools. And I think we've got to do a lot of proactive work to support that rather than the focus on reactive. How can we support children once they're in this state? And I really do believe through positive psychology, teaching children the importance of gratitude and empathy and mindfulness is a great way to get kids to focus on what's important and actually what's really good in their lives, rather than focusing on what other people are thinking about me. Because I think looking back, when I grew up, I had none of those external pressures. I was playing football and I was a girl. I never had anyone say to me, "Why are you playing football? You're a girl. That's a boy's sport." Wow. But I know that girls have that these days. So I think we've got to really focus on breaking down some of those barriers that kids are currently facing, and give them the opportunity to be who they want to be and to not feel the pressure of conforming to the ideal world or the ideal student, what they should look like, and give kids the freedom more to be whoever they want to be and for them to become whoever they want to be. So yeah, I think it's really important that we're a little bit more proactive in that space and teach kids positive psychology.
Yeah, uncovering that identity. And, to touch on it again is learning how to face the fear and doing it anyway.
Absolutely.
I love that about your story. I'm having a giggle because I'm off to a conference next week, and I know that the people I'm going with, they're nudging me because we've got ice baths set up on the Friday morning. And wow. I can tell you, look, I can do a lot of things, but the idea of jumping into a bucket of ice, it's just not really appealing to me right now. But speaking to you, Billie, it might just be the thing that lets me play that whisper in my mind. Billie says you just got to do it.
Absolutely.
Feel the fear and do it anyway. Oh, Billie, it's been such a pleasure and a privilege to speak to you today. Where can all of our listeners find you? And of course, SolarBuddy, we will put all of our links into today's show notes. But where can they connect with you personally? Where can they find you? Continue the conversation.
So LinkedIn's probably the best way to connect with me personally. So it's just Billie Murphy if you search for me on LinkedIn. And then our website is just solarbuddy.org, and there's a really way you can connect with us on there.
Perfect. Well, I look forward to many more of these conversations as we work to help you guys get your purpose out there and get more energy to these kids so that we're all got equal access to education and everything that comes with that. Thanks again, Billie, and can't wait to hear what the 2022 impact is and all moving forward. And to our listeners listening today, you've been here with us at Classroom 5.0. Thank you again for joining, and we will see you later, alligators. Classroom 5.0 is brought to you by the Posify Group, a socially conscious education company arming the next gen with a sense of purpose and the future skills they'll need to thrive in this ever-evolving world. Your ratings and reviews really mean the world to us, so if you loved this episode, do let us know and share it with a friend. We'd like to say thanks to our editing guru, Clint Rance, and his team at My Video Producer, who helped us put this show together. And for today's show notes, links, and more episodes just like these, you can visit theposifygroup.com.au/podcast. Thanks for helping us imagine alive the future of learning. See you next time.